E3 has come and passed once again. There were games showcased that I'm excited for, that I'm concerned for, and some that I frankly didn't care for. Nevertheless, there was one game in particular that I am undeniably excited for. One that has been in development for quite some time. One that comes from a developer that is long due for a return to form. And it comes from the mind of Tim Schafer. Psychonauts 2 comes out this August, and what I've seen so far showcases the lunacy and madness from the original. But what made the original so good? How did Schafer and Double Fine go from making one of the most beloved cult classics of all time to fading into near obscurity? And why did so many years go by till a follow-up? To find out, I'm going back to the beginning. It's time to go back to 2005.
What color is the sky in your world? So, what color is the sky in your world? And I just kept thinking about that phrase. Yeah, if you could go into someone's world, like what color is the sky in their world?
Who is Tim Schafer? Originally a programmer for LucasArts, he became a proficient writer. It's said by Ron Gilbert, the creator of The Secret of Monkey Island, that Schafer and colleague Dave Grossman wrote about 2/3 of the game's dialogue. And because of the solid writing and positive reception, the same core team would make Monkey Island 2. Schafer and Grossman would team up one more time for Day of the Tentacle, in which Schafer would be in a lead role on a game project for the first time. This would give him the jump he needed to move on to solo projects. Full Throttle and Grim Fandango were fairly substantial hits, earning awards, accolades, and even being considered all-time greats in gaming. However, awards and achievements doesn't always mean financial success, as both games sold under expectations. By the time 2000 rolled around, LucasArts' direction changed from making adventure to action games, which caused an exodus in the company, including Schafer. Colleagues wanted him to join them in developing games solely for the PS2, but Schafer had bigger plans. He knew he could create, and didn't want to worry about being bogged down by someone above him. And so, he and former LucasArts programmers Dave Dixon and Jonathan Menzies set up shop in a former clog shop in San Francisco and founded Double Fine, where work for Psychonauts would begin. As the team worked, members of the development team from Grim Fandango and other new employees would work with the three on the new title. The studio would gain the publishing support of Microsoft Games Division, as boss Ed Fries fell in love not only with the game, but with Schafer, as the two shared a similar vision of showcasing the artistic side of games. Schafer also found the man who would lead the art direction. Scott Campbell has a certain style that grasps Schafer. His use of extreme shapes, distorted figures, simplistic detail, and varied color had given Psychonauts the style it needed. There was also a focused vision in how the game would be presented. It wouldn't solely be exploring the minds of others, but also highlighting mental disorders, and having the player not outright hate the antagonist, but rather sympathize with the whats, hows, and whys of a character dealing with what they're dealing with. Worlds had to be open, lacking as much linearity as possible. The team would display this in a demo of the theater level, which was being worked on non-stop. Multiple versions were thrown out as the game became more fleshed out. Despite the crunch and stress, the staff members really loved working at Double Fine.
There was a lot of camaraderie, you know, it was a very family atmosphere. And it was also sort of like a in the trenches atmosphere. Like it was such a tough project that we, you know, everybody sort of really bonded.
Even though people were sleeping under their desks and working like clockwork, they weren't doing it out of pressure from Schafer or any higher power. They crunched because they believed in the game. Some of the best moments at Double Fine, according to the employees, were during the worst parts in Psychonauts' development. When the demo was finished, critics praised the game's story, art, and themes. Awards and accolades were handed out in 2002 and 2003. Things calmed down a little for Double Fine, but this would be brief. In 2004, Ed Fries left Microsoft Games Division, and despite Schafer being told that his game would be fine, Microsoft announced that Psychonauts would be cancelled in favor for Voodoo Vance. I mean, it had a good soundtrack? Yeah, even I didn't actually play that one.
Well, for some reason they got nervous and they dropped it, and I fear that they dropped it in favor of the really middling title Voodoo Vince, which was a very pretty game, but not. This is, I think, going to be a winner.
Now, whose call would that have been?
I'm not 100%, but whoever it is, they should be ashamed.
All right, fair enough.
Schafer received documents detailing their decision. Microsoft claimed from its 12 focus groups, Psychonauts was dumped because 1.
The story was unoriginal, childish, and too complex for a young audience.
A weird complaint since Microsoft saw the accolades for our original story, but okay. 2. The tongue-in-cheek nature of the game is a weakness. Okay, tongue-in-cheek bad. You hear that, folks? No smartness or intelligence allowed in a game. Challenging people is illegal. 3.
The groups did not understand the humor.
Wait, you said the humor was childish, but the game is aiming for a T rating, so this is aimed towards, I don't know, teens and young adults? So who the hell was in these focus groups? The Senior Activity Center? 4. The groups disliked the satirical humor.
Won't somebody please think of the children?
5.
The game had limited replayability.
You know, that's probably the best criticism so far. The game is short, and there isn't that much to do after the game is complete. There's no side missions or anything like that, except for the treasure hunt. 6. Humor should be implemented as a secondary or supporting characteristic to the game, and should be made simplified. Oh, so we're back to this narrative again. Okay, no smart context. We need our consumers to eat the slop and clap their Dorito-encrusted and Mountain Dew-splashed hands. 7.
The game needs to limit its Americanization, i.e., the summer camp.
Yeah, that main plot element in your game, throw it out the window. It's too Americanized. You need your game to be as globally neutral and non-nationalistic as possible. Like Halo. Wait, aren't there summer camps in other parts of the world? Like, come on, that can't be just an American thing, right? There's summer camps in the rest of the world, right? The news left the team at Double Fine in a state of shock and horror. No publisher, no money, and a half-finished game with 3 years of work put into it. Schafer told the team to continue working while he looked for another publisher. He was frantically looking. He described the process as one of the most terrifying and stressful times in his life, as he would go to publisher, rejection after rejection, while funding the studio entirely by himself. There was one publisher that actually agreed to sign with Double Fine, even taking the studio's routing number, but Schafer desperately needed the money sooner rather than later, so he approached a friend to loan him $250,000, the price of a whole payroll for his employees. And he would pay the friend back with interest. Sadly, that publisher never responded again, and Schafer was stuck with another $250,000 of debt. He gathered his team to announce the final paycheck, and that if people wanted to, they can use the computers in the studio to work on their resumes, or they can continue working without pay. At the very, very last minute, publisher Majesco Entertainment signed with Double Fine. Schafer paid back his debts, including his friend, with interest, and the team returned to work, crunching even harder to meet the deadline of February 2005. Thankfully, the team did finish, and Psychonauts released on April 19th, 2005, not just for the Xbox, but for the PlayStation 2 as well. From the moment Raz walks on top of the brain with the game's name, you know that this is unlike anything you've seen. Psychonauts is unapologetic of what it is, and that is a satirical case study on the human mind.
Welcome to my mind.
It's so empty.
Even to this day, there really hasn't been that many games that get close to the same level of imagination, joy, and even harsh reality of what is featured here. Some of my favorite TV shows or movies have this balance. You're not going to have a "where do you think we are" or "I want to be an architect" emotional impact, but there is a genuine sympathy for both the protagonist and antagonist. Everything about this universe is meticulously crafted to the point where you feel the care and passion from every single member of the Double Fine team. There's so much to deconstruct and appreciate, it's hard for me where to start. I think it's best to start with the art style and design. One of my favorite forms of animation is stop motion. Tim Burton, Wallace and Gromit, hell, even the original Thomas the Tank Engine series had some incredibly impressive and unique ways of telling stories and showcasing their worlds. Psychonauts nails this aesthetic so perfectly. It's not just the janky, extremely different and grotesque features on the characters. It's the eyes and movement. All of the characters have these glass-looking eyes. They're pretty beautiful to look at. Not only do they mimic the eyes of a doll, they're also really damn expressive. I love how, aside from Raz, everyone's eyes are misshapen, not centered, and even differ from size. Then there's the movements. There's no smoothness to it. It's all jerky and quick, and I love it. The abilities that Raz can get are phenomenal. You have your more generic abilities, such as marksman or telekinesis.
Very nice. Now set me down easy and go pick up something that won't blow up your head if you make it mad.
But very quickly, you'll be able to acquire some of the more fun, absurd abilities. Pyrokinesis lets you light enemies, things, or yourself on fire. Clairvoyance lets you see how the world sees you. Every living being, both mental and real, sees Raz very differently. And Levitate, which not only lets you get around the world faster and slightly hover, but you can abuse the ever-living crap out of it, allowing you to reach places you wouldn't think you could reach. Plus, I love how it's portrayed as just a thought bubble you just stand on. Love is also given to the environments, both in the reality and in the mentality. Whispering Rock's summer camp feels fairly massive. There's a lot of places to explore with a fair amount of verticality. Walking around the grounds, talking to characters, fighting the side bears is fun, but climbing the trees or finding caves can yield its own rewards. I also adore the building design. They're so cartoony and angular, it fits with the jagged nature of the characters. Then in the second half of the game, the abandoned insane asylum feels just like something out of Nightmare Before Christmas. And the camp at night turns from a summer fun sight for kids to tension-filled paranoia. But of course, the real show is in the mind levels.
You are my own creation. I command you to stop! Rasputin, it's time to earn your merit badge!
When Raz is pulled into Oleander's mind, you know you're in for a treat. The mental levels are so dense with detail and character that even years later, I'm still finding new things. The bush is made of bullet bandoliers, the pumps that you race through, the bed that's made to look like Edgar. Even in a level like Sasha's that 90% of the time is an empty cube, it's full of details you might have missed in your first, second, or even third playthroughs. The levels have just as much character and story to them as the actual characters in-game, because while the levels themselves reflect the person you see in the real world, whether it be Mia's bubbly and fun personality or Gloria's adoration of the stage, they also portray the dark, repressed sides of one's past. There is so much to explore and uncover. An open world doesn't have to be the scale of Just Cause 3's Medici or GTA 5's San Andreas. Psychonauts does this brilliantly by cramming as much story and heart into every square inch of this universe. One massive element to this density is how each mind represents some sort of mental disorder. These minds don't just portray the characters' personalities and hidden pasts. They also showcase some sort of cognitive issue. Floyd might be the way he is due to his psychotic breakdown after being fired from his security job and being hypnotized by Oleander, but he has some sort of extreme paranoia to try and make sense of how he sees the world, turning his mind into a twisted and nonsensical landscape. Fred is a very competitive person, but being beaten by Crispin over and over not only has shattered his mind to the point where he thinks he's Napoleon Bonaparte, but he also suffers from depression, allowing the fictional relative to take over.
Who's winning?
Nobody's winning. Want to know who's losing? The Bonaparte family name.
Look, I forfeit, okay? You win. Napoleon Bonaparte wins again.
Is that the real Napoleon Bonaparte? I mean the imaginary real Napoleon Bonaparte?
Yeah, I'm actually related to him. Can you believe it? Shut up! Stop telling people that shameful fact. I don't even want to be here. But when this sad excuse for a Bonaparte lost a simple game of war to a feeble-minded invalid, I just could not take it anymore. I was forced to take control, and I will stay in control until I beat the love of victory into this degenerate swine who dares to call himself a Bonaparte. No, really, great-great-great-grandpa Napoleon, I do love victory, like a ton. I love it so much. You can go now, I swear. Your move!
It's even displayed in the very first level. In Oleander's mind, everything about it is grandiose and spectacular to the point where it could reflect a Call of Duty game. But something just doesn't add up. This is most reflected by the first vault. Oleander even taunts you, claiming that he has nothing to hide. But even in a universe where psychic soldiers exist, the vault portrays a story that doesn't make sense even in this universe. It's not the diving out the plane guns blazing with no parachute, or the fact that he's been in every single division of the US military. It's his stature. He's taller in his mind than he is in the real world. It's one of the biggest hints, aside from his spiel after Raz goes to his cabin for the night, that there is something wrong with him and that he is the main antagonist. That's another thing I really appreciate about this game. The antagonists here are not really evil. They all suffer from something, as mentioned previously, that's causing them to act out or cause severe psychological scarring. For Gloria, it's her mother's mistreatment and suicide. For Edgar, it's his days in high school causing anger management and emotional attachment issues. For Oleander, it's his father, slaughtering the rabbits Ole loved and his rejection from every branch of the military due to his height, causing mass hatred for the vertically gifted and lust for creating an army of his own. There's even hints to what's happening in the real world. Raz can interact with many things in Whispering Rock, both people and things, and interacting with them can foreshadow nearly everything that's about to happen.
500 years ago, enormous Titanium-bearing meteorite strikes the Earth, leaving a giant crater. 75 years ago, Houston Thorny builds his Home for the Demented to deal with the insanity epidemic. 5 years ago, Whispering Rock Psychic Summer Camp founded to nurture and train future psychonauts. Last summer, I got to first base with Elka Doom.
The kids and adults of this insane world are just as intriguing and unique. The other campers, the Psychonauts, the residents of the asylum, and the characters in the mines are all very enjoyable. Whether it be the resistance fighters of Lungfishopolis, Ford Cruller and his different disguises, or Dr. Lobato and his dentistry practice. They all have so much to say, and even crack some incredible jokes.
Okay, there's your special musket. Ready?
All right, now I'm all set to go rob that stupid carpenter.
What?
Hey, Goggalor! Down here!
Excuse me, were you talking to me?
Ah! Ow! My ears!
I'm sorry.
Ah! Oh my god! Ah!
Are you okay?
He's dead.
I hate to be so blunt, but you have the insanity of a manatee.
I know. People are always saying that. What do you think's wrong with my brain, Doctor?
How should I know? I'm a dentist.
All of the voices are performed by some of the best. Stephen Stanton, Nick Jameson, David Kay, Tara Strong, they all do a fantastic job here.
Mr. Pokelope!
Oh dear God, Tara.
Mr. Pokelope! I was so scared!
But the one who really nails it out of the park is Richard Horvitz. I've grown up with a lot of media featuring Horvitz in some form. Billy and Mandy, Invader Zim, Angry Beavers, even Squirrel Boy.
What the fuck is a Squirrel Boy?
Unlike his other performances, Raz's character is both being super serious and determined to becoming a Psychonaut, but also being a kid as well. It's not over the top like Billy or Zim, but more of a middle ground. And because of it, Raz does appeal to not only people in their tweens, but people of any age. I think one of the most impressive things about the original Psychonauts is, despite its age, this still looks good overall. Not perfect, as some textures are a little outdated, but it still looks great. The leniency on a doll-like look for the characters and the cartoony, zany looks of the world surrounding makes for a perfect, near ageless look.
And to tie off this weird and lovable gift of a game, you had Peter McConnell composing the score. It's bombastic, over the top, reflective, and sometimes even in your face, just like the game itself.
Psychonauts is a damn near flawless game. Damn near. For 99% of it, the story, the world, the overall writing is excellent. It's funny, intriguing, and even severely fucked up in a great way. But one thing that bothered me about it, and came in a realization during my recent playthrough, is the story with Raz's dad. The last level of the game, where Raz and Oleander's minds become a tangled mess, where Raz's history growing up in the circus, and Oleander's childhood trauma with his pet bunnies and butcher father. It's an excellent level, apart from when you're platforming away from the water. But that's not the gripe. The gripe is with Raz's real dad. The player is consistently told and reminded that Raz ran away from home to Whispering Rock because he wanted to chase his dream of being a Psychonaut. But his father hated psychics because of how they ruined the family and cursed them to drown in water. When we finally meet Raz's father, not only is he more than enthusiastic of his son becoming a Psychonaut, he himself is a psychic. Where Raz's idea of his father hating psychics is not really explained. He tells Rad that he only wants what's best for him, which is fine, but maybe if there was some sort of meat, then that sentiment would have held stronger. Maybe his father could have said something along the lines of, well, I just was scared that you would end up like the gypsies that cursed us, or even I was taught that psychics were evil because of your granddad. Something to add the smallest amount of weight to his reasoning, so that the version that's in Raz's head makes some canonical sense. Ah well, maybe in the next game. Oh, you thought I was talking about Psychonauts too. No. I'm thinking of this. Psychonauts in the Rhombus of Ruin is not necessarily a full-fledged sequel, but a placeholder for the events taking place directly after the original. This came out 4 years ago as a VR experience. It's sort of a like father, like son, because unless if you had a VR headset and an interest in the original game, Rhombus of Ruin got high scores, but lowish sales. So what do you do in it? Well, you get a first look at what Psychonauts 2 will look like. Seeing Mia for the first time is an exciting moment because of the odd style translated into the modern age. Color, lighting, and scale feel wonderful here. It's a serious improvement on what was already an incredible looking game. The Psychonaut ship has sharp blues and whites, whereas the underground base has a patina, water-damaged atmosphere with the gorgeous muted blue water. And you've got the returning voices and personalities of each character, with Schafer's writing taking center stage. Although there is no explanation for Raz's dad and his reasonings, there is a revelation for another character. Dr. Lobato in the original game was sort of just there. Nothing more than a sidekick to Oleander. But here, he is the villain, and we get to learn his backstory. It's actually quite touching and adds a new level of weight to his character.
Oh, will you look at our little angel? Our perfect boy. so sweet and peaceful. His whole life ahead of him.
I can already tell he's going to be a doctor, just like his old man.
Or an architect. Or a lawyer. Maybe a dentist.
God forbid!
Hey, what's this teddy bear doing in his crib? You know the eyes aren't child-safe.
Don't look at me. He must have been the cleaning lady.
And of course, Peter McConnell returns to provide some new songs, one of which is a fantastic James Bond-esque theme song.
And didn't you get my Mayday telegram to please stay away from that parallelogram?
As a story and visual experience, it makes fans even more excited for the next game. As an actual game, it's one of those games that makes me ask, did this really need to be a VR-only experience? And to some degree, yes-ish? This feels like a point-and-click adventure game translated into VR. Roughly. You may have noticed that you don't see my hands, and that is because that's intentional. Basically, you control Raz's mind by looking at and highlighting things and using different psychonetic powers to manipulate them. I get it because, in theory, you're interacting with the world with your mind. In execution, well, how do I put this? You ever just headbang or just shake your head around at a concert? Okay, imagine that, but you have a heavy, hot screen attached to your face, and you're constantly moving your head and neck, sometimes fighting the game because you want one thing to go somewhere, but the game is actively fighting you in doing so. It really started to hurt my neck about 30 minutes in, and I had to pull away after another 30 minutes. It also made me wonder what happened to the psi hands that Raz would have. Either Schafer really wanted to make it so that all your actions were done mentally, or that they just didn't want to animate the hands. This is more of a tech demo than it is a game. Whatever. The bottom line is that it's a nice little bridge for what's to come. But I do wish there was a non-VR version. When Psychonauts originally launched in 2005, the people at Double Fine were excited to see all their hard work be in the hands of the public. Sadly, the sales numbers were not to their expectations. And for Schafer, it seemed that history repeated itself. High praise from critics and those who did buy the game originally, but the masses just didn't recognize nor care enough. There were two key factors for this. One, the Xbox 360 was announced and coming later that year. And two, the shifting market. Most people at the time did not want a classic platformer. They wanted action, guns, and explosions, and multiplayer. And most people could not justify spending the $50 on an artsy type single player game when games like Halo 2 were sweeping the world. Schafer still feels some level of resentment over this, because while he was able to save his studio, his employees, and even his own life and getting accredited by the industry's highest, he really wanted people to play a game he envisioned from the ground up. And for a while, Double Fine faded back into obscurity. For a little bit. So why is Double Fine going back to Psychonauts now? In a way, it was thanks to Steam. The cult classic gained more attraction when it moved over to the PC's biggest game storefront. More and more people were discovering Psychonauts thanks to a sale or even through a Humble Bundle, and more people began to experience it. This new resurgence of sales and new fans was so impactful, the demand for another game grew, and thankfully, Schafer heard it. Psychonauts is both a wonderful and important piece of gaming history. It solidified Tim Schafer and Double Fine at being more than capable in making games known for their worlds, gameplay loops, and characters. It genuinely is a game that I seriously recommend to anyone and everyone that is interested in gaming and game development. How, if a person like Schafer is let free, that magic can be made. But There is more to this story. Because after Psychonauts, Schafer wanted to create another game he had been dreaming of. That project would be 2009's Brutal Legend, a game based around a fictional world based around classic rock and metal, and unfortunately, it seemed like history would repeat itself yet again. Favorite Telltale game? Ooh, that's a hard one. I go back and forth between a three-way tie for Sam & Max Seasons 1 and 2, The Walking Dead Season 1, and The Wolf Among Us. Sam & Max, even to this day, is still very funny and has a great art style that's still visually pleasing despite the aged tech. The Walking Dead for redefining what a point-and-click can be with its top-tier writing, and The Wolf Among Us for its universe and characters. Also, meme. Least favorite Telltale game. I haven't played the Back to the Future or Jurassic Park games yet, but I did play the first season of Telltale's Batman, and my feelings were overall mixed. I enjoyed the art style and some of the writing, but this was made during that time where the studio was just licensing every damn thing under the sun, and it showed when I played Batman. I have Season 2 and part of me wants to play it, but another part of me just doesn't care that much for it. Favorite steamed vegetable? Cauliflower. Good raw, great steamed, and excellent mashed or smashed. Makes for a good pizza crust too. When will you play CSGO with me? Either when I win a shambles race or if Ray asks me a question here.
Which era of gaming was the best era? In my mind, it would be the 2000s. First, because I grew up in the 2000s, so I actually remember it better. And second, it was a time where everyone, AAA or smaller, were experimenting. There were so many ideas being made into reality, some garnering a massive following, a cult fanbase, or forgotten by time. Nowadays, AAA has played it safe, and sometimes pandering to higher powers, whereas indies now are the 2000s era of games. The 2000s didn't disappear, it just migrated, and gaining more freedom because of it.